Florida has a lot. I selected. I had Otis Toole.
Otis Toole, yeah, I was hoping you were gonna say that because there's always been that big conspiracy if he killed Adam Walsh.
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't prove it, right?
What do you think?
Otis wasn't he wasn't the brightest bulb in the bunch there. It kind of felt like it would be, but I don't know because he was also friends with others, and so
Yeah, what, Henry Lee Lucas
yeah,
and
Henry Lee Lucas, exactly. So
ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. Got a very interesting guest here, Johnny Trevisani.
hey man,
Welcome to Crime and Entertainment, my friend.
thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. So I interviewed your would this be co-author Mr. Whitney a while back. I think he wrote the book on Slava. Putzuk, I think was his name. And he sent me an email this week and told me about an interesting book you guys just put out, Serial Killer Travel Guide Across America. That's not something you're going to see every day. First I got to figure out how the hell you come up with this book. Where's the origin story at? Let's get the origin.
So I work with I do have another book, and Brian helped me get that published, and that book was the serial killer quote of the day, which is also campy, right? So it's no who thinks of that, and I thought that was a funny little take on stuff. Um, and so this book, this is a couple of years ago. I was thinking about, um, I was researching, I was reading a lot about the Gilgo Beach murders, which
Yeah.
is Rex Heuermann up in Long Island, who is alleged. I have to say alleged, uh, uh, of the Long Island serial killer. And so I was
Also,
like,
also done a little killing down here in Charleston where I'm at.
and yeah, he gets around. He So I didn't know where Gilgo Beach was, and
Right.
I've been up to Long Island a bunch of times, and I've been various places, but I never heard of it. So I looked it up on a map, and I was like, hey, that's cool. All right, now I know where it is. And I was like, yeah, I've been there, I've driven by there. And then I thought, hey, it would be a cool thing to do to have a travel guide with all these different places. I just thought that would be kind of funny. And so, um, where you just take a state where you can create your own route and go from one place to another place and visit where some serial killers were, where they did their stuff, and where they were born, kind of stuff like that. Now, I'll understand some of these places no longer exist
Right.
because we're dealing. Some of the places are 110 years old. But you go to the same store, same city or the same town,
Right.
and you can get an idea. And but it's written in a I kind of describe it like a 1960s travel guide. Like, hey, while you're in town, you might want to see this, and hey, so that's a kind of the vibe. It's a lighthearted vibe on a dark subject, and we go into pretty good detail about the people, but they're not. It's not a hard read. It's going to be hopefully funny. I mean, the reviews that I'm getting back, they're getting the joke and they're getting the humor from it. So
Yeah.
it's meant to be a little bit campy and
Well, you got to make the dark things a little bit lighter. And, people have a fascination with this type of stuff. Like, I'm a big horror movie fan. And I think I've seen where they turn the house from Texas Chainsaw Massacre into like a diner cafe type thing. And you can go visit it. And so people from all over the world go visit that. And I'm just like, yes, it wasn't real, even though it was allegedly based on certain things. But like, even in the movie, these people cut up people with chainsaws. They served them in the chili, and people go there in groves just to see the house. So you're not agreeing with it, you're not celebrating it, but there's a fascination behind, I think, the mental state of how these people tick. Obviously, yeah, they're very hated individuals, such as the guy that done all that stuff in Idaho, Brian Colbert or whatever his name is, Coburg or whatever. But there's such a interest in what makes someone do something like that. And with that comes, okay, well, where did it happen? And then you kind of go there and you get a picture in your head. It's just human psychological. I think when you're into that kind of stuff, it's just, stuff that just comes natural.
Yeah. So the first book was that's what drew me was more the psychology of it, like
Mm.
in their words, in how they're thinking. It's a very unique perspective on either justifying their actions or just you know trying to understand their psyche a little bit. And that's what drew me into that. And that was a pretty dark hole to go into it because then I had to choose which quotes I'm going to use and which biographies. And so when I'm trying to debate what kind of quote I'm going to use from Albert Fish, who ate
Oh
children,
God.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, like it gets kind of dark, but you do get a sense of their their psyche, their the way that they think.
And I covered him. I covered him on an episode with a former ATF agent. And I mean, this dude basically swindled a couple to take, I don't know if it was their child or grandchild, but took her, said he was going to go to a birthday party, and then later on sent him a letter describing how he basically cooked her and devoured her. I mean, it's just, and then stuff all kind of needles into his rectum. I mean, this was just the wildest dude you could imagine. I mean, it's just there's some sick people out there, man, for sure.
For sure. And the first one was more gruesome. That book was more gruesome. This is
Right.
again like I'm trying to make it a little bit lighter because hey, you know, while you're in South Carolina,
Yeah, let's start with South Carolina. What do you got for South Carolina?
So South Carolina, I only have one person in South Carolina, and that's Henry Lewis Wallace.
Okay.
He's a Taco Bell strangler, and that's why I like that one. I mean, come on, if you're going to be named a killer, uh, you know, Taco Bell strangler is a pretty good one, right?
And where did this happen?
In Barnwell. So
Barnwell.
he was known for Barnwell, which is, you know, yeah, there's nothing there.
No, I've heard of Barnwell. I'm in Charleston area. Yeah, deep South. What's some of the facts on that?
So he, he was born in the '60s, and he had a similar, just bad upbringing, which gives him a different weird perspective on it. But he was kind of like a drifter. Like he bounced around as he got older into adolescence
Mm,
and after high school. Um, he actually enlisted in the Navy for a little bit, which is interesting because there's a number of serial killers that do that. That
mhm.
I thought about doing a statistical analysis on other people that joined the military, but yeah, he joined the Navy, but he was always doing little petty crimes and such. Um, uh, so then he then moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, right?
Right.
And so he just was sort of living on the outskirts, but he preyed on black women,
Mhm.
and uh, he also and the reason why he's called the Taco Bell killer is because he managed a Taco Bell, and there was a in a mall called the Eastwood Mall or the Eastland Mall,
Mhm.
and so the reason why he got like that's his nickname. Imagine if John Wayne Gacy was the KFC strangler,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of the same thing, right? Um, but he was, you know, he used uh, all different types of things to lure them in, and he 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 used knives, he used strangling, but the what was interesting about that story was there were bodies just showing up during that time. This is in the early '90s, from like '90 to '94,
Mhm.
and they weren't putting things together.
Right.
Y- and I don't know what the police down in South Carolina, but um, come on, man, you this is this is actually after the 70s, 80s. You should be kind of used to serial murder in the world. So, but yeah, I mean, they were leaving. Um, he was leaving a trail of bodies, and he also didn't really care about leaving evidence. So he had a boatload of evidence that he left behind. So it made it pretty easy to find. Yeah. So,
Wow.
but
How many
he was
victims
sentenced
did
to
he have?
death, but he's still, in prison in North Carolina.
Okay.
He was
Yeah, how
born in.
many victims did he have?
Uh,
11, that's pretty good. When I think South Carolina serial killers, 2 people come to mind and jump off the page. One is Pee Wee Gaskins, very small statured individual, but killed a lot of people, and nobody really knows the exact number. He claims in excess of 100. Um, I don't know
yeah,
how many they
well, they confirmed
confirm.
what 15, right? They confirmed 15 for
Yeah.
him, and then, but he claimed that,
Yeah, he claimed a lot, and it was getting to the point to where they were letting him out of jail to go to the woods and find these people, and to start with, he was leading them to bodies, and then it would go out, and he was like, "Well, everything's changed. I don't remember exactly where it was, and, maybe it's over here, maybe it's over there," which could be
it's
true. Yeah.
in his defense. If it's 110, that's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, and it could be true, but I think they were kind of like, maybe he's fucking with us a little
Oh,
bit.
he's definitely making it up, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
and according to him in his autobiography, which is probably one of the most brutal books I've ever read in my life, he sunk a lot of people in the marsh, which is, not a bad way to get rid of a body around here in the Low Country. We do have alligators and, things of that nature. That's not a bad way to get rid of them. Uh, but yeah, that autobiography is really hard to find nowadays. It was called The Final Truth. It is out there. I've seen that thing go everywhere from a couple of $100 upwards to a few thousand to get a hardback copy of it. But it's out of print. They don't make them anymore. And I do have my hands on one. It's quite brutal. Um,
and that's the thing. You're reading it in his words, and
yeah.
yeah, and the line of thinking is really crazy, right?
I mean, and he, like you said, final quotes or quotes from serial killers. Like he opens up the book, like saying, "I don't want anybody to think I'm asking for forgiveness. This isn't what this is. I do this shit again. I'm a mean bastard. I've had voodoo people want my ashes. I don't believe in that shit. Just go ahead and fry me." I mean, he's just very frank and matter of fact. That's the opener of the book, and that's just how he is. The other one didn't necessarily have a high body count. I want to say it was maybe 5, but it was Todd Colehelp. He was arrested when they found the girl in a storage shed, handcuffed and chained into the storage shed. Then it was he had killed her boyfriend. He had lured them there on the premise of like doing cleaning on their property or on his properties that he owned. And then come to find out, on top of all that, he had killed, I think, 3 or 4 people at a motocross store because they made fun of him for not knowing how to ride a bike. I guess he went in there to try to ride a bike, tried to get on it, kinda almost slipped and fell. The 2 brothers, I don't know if they're brothers or 2 friends behind the counter kinda snickered. He goes to his car, come back, kills up the whole store, and they didn't even ping him for that. They found that out after the fact. And he actually just got in trouble for using tablets in prison to try to set up like a sales of shirts to benefit. And they changed the prison that he was in and all that. Somehow or another, all these emails are getting through the prison system and they never realized it. Yeah. Yeah. That and of course the Murdochs have been pretty popular over the last year. Yeah, so um I'm curious with a history like New York. Who's your New York guy?
Well, Berkowitz,
Yeah.
I mean, the book has both the named, you know, ones you would expect, Son of Sam, right? But we also have many other ones you probably hadn't heard of, and that's kind of the cool. Like, so I have Berkowitz in New York, and we cover his relationship with the dog. Um, you know, but
And he's expand on that really quick because some people I don't even know if they remember that portion of it. They just know him as a 44 caliber killer, but he was actually thinking that the devil possessed the dog. Is that what it was? And was giving him
He
a deal?
recanted that later on in life.
Yeah,
He said he made that up, but there was significant evidence that based off of what they were talking with their neighbors that he did. He talked, he was yelling at the dog all the time to shut up.
yeah.
So, uh,
I do that to my neighbor's dog, but,
right.
actually, he's
Well,
got 2 dogs. First,
I have these fun facts in the book, about serial killers, but he changed. He was became born again when he was in prison,
yeah,
and instead of being called Son of Sam, he's called Son of Hope, and he has a website and all that stuff. So, and I've seen that website. That's
yeah,
so vintage, 1997. It's pretty cool.
I'm sure it is. I know Michael Francis done an interview with him. I don't think I ever watched that thing in its entirety, but, it's just hard to think somebody can flip the script like that. And this guy, make no mistake about it, he had New York trembling, and New York is not a place that's scared of anybody,
Right. Well,
and he
70s was
had
a brutal place to be anyway in New
yeah,
York, and
this
to
guy's
add
got
to that,
women changing their hair and all kinds of shit. They're wearing wigs and cutting their hair because they thought he was targeting, what was it, long blonde hair girls, so people were wearing wigs, dyeing their hair, cutting their hair. I mean, they were shook in New York from this guy.
they were staying inside, going literally almost running from their cars to the buildings. Yeah, that's a pretty good effect. I mean, and he was one of the ones that actually used the media to
Yeah.
do that. I mean, like he was in communication, with media, um, which I'm sure just fueled it, right?
Oh, yeah. The chubby behemoth, I think he referred to him.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Did you see, Summer of Sam or Son of yeah,
yeah. I mean, I don't know how factual that was. It was a great movie. Love the movie.
it was a good
But I don't really know how factual that was. I think it did. I think it did a good job of New York in the
mhm,
70s and creating the hysteria that it did. Um, I thought that was good, and I believe that the way that he presented just how people were super scared. Um, but I didn't really believe the punk rocker character.
yeah. Nah, I think they created that for Adrian Brody, no doubt. I actually interviewed the guy that, co-wrote that script, so he wrote it, and his name is Victor Colicchio. He's been in a handful of movies as well, but then Michael Imperioli, who people would know from The Sopranos, he played Christopher Moltisanti. He went in, they rewrote it, so he got a co-writing credit for it. Michael wanted to direct it, if I remember the story right from what Victor told me. But with a movie like that, they kind of wanted to go with a more named director, so they went with Spike. But yeah, one of the movies that like I don't remember at the time if it was like praised or if it made a lot of money, but I definitely enjoyed the film. Sometimes you have films that don't necessarily do well at the box office, but it is good. The Zodiac is another prime example of that. I don't think it done well at the box office, but I thought it was a great film.
Yeah, I thought Zodiac was very good.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the general pace of the film and creating a little bit of you know tense feelings throughout the book or throughout the movie. I thought that was pretty good. I don't know how well it did in the theaters. I only saw it on television or whatever.
Do you have anybody else from New York?
I go up to Rochester, so the Alphabet Murders, if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the Alphabet Murders were in the early 70s, unsolved. And that's some of the other things here is that in the book, there's a number of ones that are unsolved.
Mhm.
And, you know, I kind of like leaving it, you're not sure what happens, right? You're not sure whether or not they were actually caught for some other reason or they weren't caught or they just stopped. Serial killers can do that. Serial killers can achieve what they want to achieve. But if you remember the alphabet killers, um, he was I can't say a he. They dumped the bodies based off of their name, you know,
Mhm.
which is super creepy if you think about it. That means they knew the name and then they chose a spot to dump. So it isn't random. It was thought out, but he only did 3, so only got,
Okay.
only, you know,
What about, what about Florida?
oh, Florida's filled. I I'm not gonna keep on going with a lot of, Florida has a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I selected, I had Otis Toole.
Otis Toole, yeah, I was hoping you were gonna say that because there's always been that big conspiracy if he killed Adam Walsh.
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't prove it, right?
What do you think?
Otis wasn't the brightest tool, or
No.
bright, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the bunch there. I really don't know. I don't have an opinion about it. Um, it kind of felt like it would be, but I don't know because he was also friends with others, and so
Yeah, what, Henry Lee Lucas,
Henry Lee Lucas,
and
exactly.
they had the movie that I think Mickey Rourke, or Michael Rooker, excuse me, played Henry Lee Lucas. I forgot the name of it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's called Diary of a Serial Killer or something along those lines. It's a very graphic movie. Michael Rooker played Henry Lee.
remember Michael Rooker, and it kind of, if you ever saw the picture of Otis Toole,
Yeah.
he
He's a scary he's a scary looking fucker. Is it Otis or Otis?
uh, yeah, maybe it's Otis. I don't know. Maybe I'm misspelling it, I'm mispronouncing it. Ottis. So
Yeah, okay, maybe that is it. Because I remember watching the John Walsh documentary, and for people that, maybe don't even remember who that is, he done the, America's Most Wanted, and why he done that is his son went missing from a mall. His mom had him at a mall. She left him at, I wanna say, like, a video game stand or something like that, went to check something out, come back, he was gone, and then I think to this day is all they found was the head, correct?
I don't know that story.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they found the head and not the body, or maybe it was the body and not the head. It was one or the other. But Otis confessed, then later recanted. And everybody's been linked to that. Even Jeffrey Dahmer was linked to that at one point because he was allegedly in the area. But if you have ever seen a picture, and I'm going to put one up here in post, Otis Toole was one creepy looking damn dude.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't going to get a lot of dates.
No,
Um, and if you're going to draw a picture of a serial killer, you kind of have him and Ed Gein in mind.
yeah,
Um, whereas other ones like, Dennis Rader just looks like, the guy mowing the lawn. He was just looked like any other suburbanite.
yeah,
And those are the ones, like if you see an Otis, if you see Otis or Otis, you're probably going to go, ooh, I might steer clear of him because he just kind of looked weird, right?
yeah,
But if you see Dennis Rader, you're probably just going to, talk to him about, cutting his lawn,
yeah,
and that that to me, I think that, I always kind of refer to Dennis Rader as like a really prototypical serial killer. You know, he was guy that, you could be behind in a grocery store and you wouldn't even know.
yeah. And had the one of the perfect covers. Wasn't he
He was
like
an
a
ADP. He installed security systems into homes.
so lets him go around the neighborhood, scour things out, scout the neighborhoods, and really one of the only times you ever see I forgot the break he took, but he took like what a couple year break from
Oh, he
killing.
took a decade break. It was a couple
Heck,
decades.
that
Like,
is, I don't think that's ever happened before, not that I know of.
yeah. There is sometimes that there's large, um, large breaks, but his break was pretty large. It was from the 80s to 2000,
Yeah,
and and basically he just, I guess he got kind of bored that no one was talking about him anymore. Like, you
yeah.
know, he got caught by a floppy disk. I love that he got caught by a disk.
Dude, and like the dumbest shit, wanting to communicate with them, telling them to put a fucking ad in the paper, and then gives the floppy disk, and they trace the floppy disk back to DRAM, like the dumbest way you can get caught ever. And then to watch him in a courtroom, you could just tell that he got off on telling the story of what he did, because he would have somebody on the stand, and he would just ask question by question. So, could you tell how many times, they were strangled, or could you tell how tight the tourniquet was? I mean, like, he liked, I guess, the facts of it to be recited back to him, which is terrifying.
He did I mean, serial killers do like to relive their things, so, he loved that. He was such an egomaniac
Yeah.
about all that, so he loved the attention and he loved to relive those things.
Do you think there's something to that, of where, like, you know, do they have a deep seated desire to be caught at some point in time, or do they want to do it and get away with it? Because some people, to me, seem like Dennis seemed like he wanted to get caught. He done stupid shit till he got caught. Some, like the Zodiac, maybe they seem like he flirted definitely by sending letters to the press, but ultimately, did stop, at least from the Zodiac stuff. I know there's
Something
Lin-
happened, right?
Linda
So
Lee.
we don't really know, and that's why it's such an intriguing story,
Mhm,
with Zodiac. But do I think that they want to call it? I think some do, and I think some don't. You can take a look at Ed Kemper, who completed what he wanted to do, and so he was no longer going to kill anymore, right?
mhm,
He wanted to kill his mother in a specific way, and do things to her body in a specific way, and that's why he practiced on the co-eds.
mhm.
But when he finished, you remember that, that story about
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
He
Co-ed
like
killer,
called
yeah.
the police, and then they were like joking, "Oh, Ed, didn't really believe him," and then he had to give him all the information about the other kills. Um,
Terrifying looking individual too, just that towering presence. Kinda like the guy, the Gilgo Beach guy. He was a tall dude.
yeah, yeah. I mean, 6'9", 300 pounds, right?
And
But he
the
but
thing
he had a
about
really gentle demeanor, like, when you talk to him.
Yeah, he did though. I remember I watched the documentary they just did on Netflix, like a three-part documentary. It's very good, very well done. And he had like this thing where the guy was at his office in New York and he was telling him about, I forgot, was the architect or something like that? Something along those lines. I mean, just like very personable guy.
Rex Heuermann was like this architect adjacent, like, he did analysis, and it wasn't like he was designing buildings or anything, he was doing the analysis for it.
Okay.
Um, but which is still it's very technical, and,
Mhm.
I guess it got to him. He had weird hobbies.
Yeah, and the thing about it though was like one of the first women that he killed, like I guess the friend that, he knew what the girl was doing or whatever. And I guess he caught a look at me. He told him, he's like, dude drives a green, I think he drove an Avalanche, said he's like 6'2", so he looks like a ogre. And they never really followed up with him on that, which that whole damn town was corrupt as fuck anyway. If you watch that documentary, like there was corruption in and out of that damn town from one side to the other.
I didn't watch that documentary, though. I
It's
will.
very good, I recommend it. I actually was on I was flying from South Carolina to San Francisco, so I had quite a lot of time to kill, on the plane, and that was one of them that I downloaded from Netflix. It was very well done, and it had a lot of footage of him and doing those little, I guess, advertisements he was doing, and then his home looked very dilapidated, even though the neighborhood didn't look that bad. Yeah,
And you have to think that, hey, his wife. I mean, remember the whole thing with his wife. How did she not know?
yeah.
Right? And I don't know. I don't. I don't think that she was involved in it, but she, it's kind of wild not to notice something.
Well, you take a guy like Richard Kuklinski, Iceman. He was a hitman from New Jersey, and that guy went out and would kill people on Christmas Eve. And when he got busted, his wife claimed she didn't have a clue what he was doing. And he was allegedly a hitman for the mob. I think some of his stories are embellished of the number of people that he killed, but he definitely killed people.
Yeah, I would have. I've always thought about the mob as being this discussion about capital punishment. You know, as being like an answer. Well, they're not really affecting general public.
No,
you know, they're they're just affecting their community, and they're
yeah.
dealing. So it doesn't really affect me. I mean, I might be in a restaurant, but I still doubt that I would be killed. Um, but that's an example where this the culture of the mob can and manage itself.
Mhm. Yeah. And it does. It does. And sometimes, like when you don't want to piss off a faction or whatever, then you would hire outside, what they call outside the family, to do a piece of work or a piece of business. That way, it's not necessarily linked back to you. Allegedly, that's where Richard come in. He was a hired gun, if you will. Now, when you get into all the ins and outs of did he really freeze people to throw authorities off at the time of death, that's that's up for debate. Um, the Philly area, who you got around the Philly or Pennsylvania area? You
So in
got
Philly, yeah, I mean, so I'm around Philly, and in Pennsylvania, if you know anything about Pennsylvania, you have Philly and Pittsburgh, and in
mhm.
between you have Pennsylvania. So um, in Philly, I capture there's a couple known people in Philly. One would be Gary Heidnick, and one would be and the other one that I actually did was Marty Graham. Both of them were kind of similar. Both of them like to chain people up in their basement, and they were in North Philadelphia. So, Marty Graham, I thought his story was a little bit more. Both of them were pretty interesting, but Marty Graham, um, he was a entrepreneur. Like I kind of like his story. Like he was really just an entrepreneur, and he was, an apartments that he was renting. Um, Whereas Gary Hodnick just wanted to replenish the world,
Yeah.
and he wanted to impregnate and replenish. Um, Both of them had pretty big egos to do that, to achieve.
That one I've heard of. I've heard of Heidnick before. I haven't heard of the other guy, but I've heard of Heidnick.
Yeah, Marty Graham, he would take prostitutes and such, and because those are easy targets, right? I mean, and they're also not going to be missed.
Yeah.
So that's who he would take, and he would chain him up and then kill them and keep him in his basement. So, in his house. And so when they actually caught him, he had, I think they just kind of described it like a mausoleum, like a collection of bodies. There was literally just a collection of bodies in there, and the smell was awful coming from that property.
Oh, I bet. Well, the same thing they said with Gacy's house, like, people would smell that stuff because he had so many bodies buried in the damn crawl space and everything else.
Yeah, but he also had lie. He actually, and so you think that one might be a giveaway, but
Yeah,
I guess back in the 70s, people weren't really tracking lie the way they are now.
yeah.
But that's the whole thing. That's what led me on with my first book with Dahmer. So the quote that got me really down that rabbit hole was from Dahmer, and that's what he told the police when they came to his apartment investigating the smell. And he
Mhm.
said, "Oh, my refrigerator broke and the meat spoiled." Right? And I'm like, "Wow." You know, that's what he told him, and what he's hiding. What meat is spoiling. So
Didn't he lose a damn like, an Asian kid that he was torturing and holding hostage? The kid got away, found the cops bleeding from his ass, I think, and went back, and the cops were just like, "Excuse me, sir, did you lose this Asian kid out by the fucking street?" I mean, it was the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, they had him, and Jesus, that is always, like, boggled my mind of how the kid got away, ran to the cops, and they brought him back to the guy that was torturing him. Like, whoever those I hope those fucking cops retired.
there's, you know, I have to put myself in the place of the police, and so I don't know what they're really up against. And they probably hear a lot of different stories every night, right? And you see a guy coming from an apartment building, and gay guys, and thinking, oh, maybe this is just a spat. I don't want to deal with it. Whatever. You have him back. I don't know. I don't really know.
Maybe. I guess hindsight is 2020, but damn. Even after the fact, if I find out I gave a guy back to one of the most notorious serial killers in the world, well, yeah, it's change a career time. Maybe this ain't I'm definitely not making detective, I can tell you that. What's out of this whole thing, what's one of them? So I wanna ask 2 questions. The first one is, like, what was the most terrifying out of everybody that you read?
So everybody that I researched, and even though that Carl Panzram is not in the book, he is to me a serial killer that you're familiar with, Carl Panzram, right?
Oh,
And oh my God, so he's from the early 1900s.
okay.
And there's a great fun fact that I love telling people about with Carl Panzram. But he killed. They don't really know. Um, how many people he actually killed, but it was lots. And they say that it was he would 25. I think he confessed to like 21 or something, 20, 26 or something, but there was a suspected of over 100. But what also made him gruesome is that he would rape people, and he wasn't raping women, he was raping primarily men. And he
Ooh.
would do this so that he would take their souls. He did it to take their souls and demasculate them. Um, and he was a guy that if you met, you were either going to get raped or you were going to be killed. Like it was binary for him. Um,
Mhm.
and the fun fact with him that I have is that he served in World War I, and in World War I, he was court-martialed because he really wasn't a cool dude, right? So he was court-martialed, and back then, the Secretary of War, which is what they called the Secretary of Defense back then, so they called it Secretary of War, was William Taft, who later became president.
Mhm.
And William Taft signed the order for him to go to Leavenworth and go to jail. So after the war, he's let out of Leavenworth. Taft becomes president. And then after Taft becomes president, he becomes a Supreme Court justice. And while Taft is the Supreme Court justice, Carl Panzram broke into his house. Now, he wasn't home at the time, but he broke into his house and stole his revolver and killed 10 people with that revolver.
Holy shit! I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of like fun facts.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I fancy myself to know quite a bit, but I've
Persons who actually went through Philly too. Um, he was attributed with one place in Philly. I didn't put him in the book. Um, he killed a paper boy in Philly, and there was an island in Philly that is now what they refer to as the Navy Yard. If you go there, and it's called the Navy Yard, and that's where it's an industrial. It's a high tech area, so there's a lot of companies that are in there. But that's where he killed the paper boy, and he yeah. So yeah.
ooh. Um, what was the guy's name I was about to ask you about? I can't. I'll come back to it in a minute. So that was the most, I guess, terrifying.
Here's the most terrifying. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Albert Fish is also, when you think about Albert Fish, there are some people that are just gruesome, and
I would put him in the category as gruesome. And the thing about it is, like, if you looked at him, he looked like somebody's grandfather or
yeah,
your
he
own
looked like he'd be just
grandfather.
sitting
Whatever.
on a porch, right?
Yeah.
He would just be sitting on a porch, on a rocking chair or something. But man, that guy had some serious fetishes.
Yes, and those are the ones that I think to me are more scary because, like you said, Otis Toole we mentioned earlier, and he's just so damn ugly. He's worth mentioning again. Those guys, if you see them, you're going to be like, "Yeah, I'm staying away from that guy." But if you've seen Albert Fish, oh, sir, let me get the door for you. I mean, and probably just as bad, if not worse, with the shit he did because he did his shit. Well, I mean, Otis did it to kids too, but I mean, just both horrible individuals. But one of them seemingly on the outside, you would treat with utmost respect and think he's just a sweet old man.
That's true. I also another person that I think well, a lot of the people that I highlighted in the book are have kind of good stories. I like the stories behind them,
Mm.
and because you could fill it up with I filled up with 80 different serial killers. Um, uh, and just so we're clear, so if you the way the book is laid out, you're gonna go to an area and you're gonna learn about serial killer, but then there's always going to be another spot on there that you can go to. Now, I'm a fan of dive bars, so I put a lot of different dive bars you can go in there. But then there's other attractions you can see, much like a travel.
I'm a dive bar guy myself, so I'm a fan of this book already. What about
Um,
what about women?
right. So I do have a couple women in there. I have the Lonely Hearts Killer, um, Nanny, you know, and she killed all of her husbands, and she also killed her kid. But that's an example of The police just didn't catch it. Like, how could you not? Like, she's leaving a trail of, you know, of husbands, and they're all dying basically the same way, right? Arsenic. Like that was her thing. She was really good at it. And I'm thinking, you might want to check. Oh, another one deceased. Really, at age 30 some years old. Like, nah, they're just not on top of things. So yeah.
I forgot who tells that. It's the old guy. He tells that joke, and he's like, "Yeah, my first wife died of poison. Second wife died of poison. Third wife, she had a blow to the head. She wouldn't drink the poison." I mean, it's like you got to figure out, something's not adding up here, and those are some one of the creepiest ones. When you, I remember I was a kid. And I had this fond memory. Um, I was home alone. It was during the summer. My mom was working. My dad hung sheetrock. He was a blue collar guy, and we were getting some work done to the house. I want to say like a room painted or something like that. And the people weren't supposed to get there until my mom got home, but they got there like 45 minutes early, an hour early. And so I look outside, and it's an older woman. It was two women. One of them was a little, I'd say probably at the time, maybe in her 40s, 50s. The other one was probably in her 30s to 40s. So I'm just assuming women, I let them in. And nothing happened. Nothing went wrong. They come in, they were who they said they were, they painted, and they got out. Well, my mom was very upset that I let them in, before she got home. And my dad coming at night, and he said, "Yeah,
I
so
mean,
when I
isn't that
grew up,"
Southern hospitality though? I mean, isn't
it
that
is, it is. And my dad was telling me, I don't know if he was doing this to just appease my mom or whatever. He's like, when I grew up, he's like, there was a boy that got his head, chopped off by an old lady with a butcher's knife. And I don't know, he might have pulled my leg or not. But after that, it was just like I didn't trust nobody old after he told me that story. And I had that
what was your
image.
definition of old?
If you had gray hair, really.
All right, there you go.
But it just creeped me out. And then, I was always a big horror movie watcher. And there was a movie, I think it's called The Visit, where these grandkids go to their grandparents' house and they find out they got like bodies buried up under the damn floor or something like that. It's very creepy. But old people in general really do creep me out. Like I just between
You're gonna
that,
be
the
old, right?
Shiny, I know I am.
You're gonna be
Let
old,
James
right?
Dean die early, leave a good looking corpse. But like, The Shining with that old woman that was following him through the hotel. Like old people just have a thing. It just creeps me out. I guess if I know them, it's okay. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. I get the heebie jeebies when I'm around old people for some reason. I don't know. It just freaks me
But so Nanny, so she was a frail little woman, but she knew how to use arsenic. Nanny
out.
Doss knew how to use arsenic, and so she put it. And one thing, she put it in a pie. So I thought, so think about that. That's a pie isn't something you just. Ooh, what are you drinking? Um,
Yeah. I actually Bubba's burnt sugar whiskey. A friend of mine, Leon Holden, shout out to Freon Leon AC, whatever the hell his company is. He turned me on to this here Bubba's burnt sugar whiskey. It's very tasty.
all right, good. Um, you know, to make a dish and then throw some arsenic in it is one thing, right? Like you're
Mhm.
making like eggs or something. That's pretty quick. But she made a pie, which takes a while, right?
Yeah. Put some thought in this.
Yeah, she put some thought, like, you know what, I'm going to do it in a cherry pie, so that's going to be strong. So you're not going to really taste the arsenic as much, but you know, I don't know. And they should have been able to back then. They had tests for tests for arsenic, but
Mhm.
you know,
What about California, man? That's got a rich history of a lot of wackadoos out there.
yeah. So California, there's a number of them, but again, I have to whittle it down, and uh, I have Ramirez because Ramirez, he was a known person, right?
Very.
But I also like that there was places you can go. Um, so because he was known to go to um, and use a park called Glassell Park, and that's where he would that's where he would kill a number of people.
Mhm.
But I also had something like the Trailside Killer, who was David Carpenter, and
Mhm.
a little bit before Ramirez. And he was busy too up around in Santa Cruz.
I interviewed, Gil Carrillo, who helped, track down Richard. I was, that whole story too with that of how they tracked down that he had that shoe, and then the governor fucking leaked it, and, like, the one lead you have to catch this fucking guy, and she leaked it, and, of course, he tossed the shoes over the damn, the bay or whatever it was, threw 'em in the river. But I was like, I said, they were pissed when they died. I think she just died not too long ago. I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead, but what a fucking moron. The one thing you got that you can ping this guy to out of all that, even back then, that technology, they thought there was like one or two pair that went to LA and your killers got them on and you leaked that to the damn Jesus. I couldn't have been a cop back in those. I'd want to fucking strangle her. But I love the way he was caught, like, the city kinda came together and essentially yeah, caught him, whipped his ass, and I like that. That's kinda,
They're
just
saying something about the police not being able to catch him, right? So it was sort
yeah.
of like the ineffectiveness of the police.
What
But yeah,
he told me this story, and it's in the documentary, you may have seen it, but they had a dentist office bugged, like, the dentist knew him, said, "Yeah, he's been in here before." They had a picture of him. And so they had the dentist office wired because he had a toothache or something. And they knew he was going to come back. So they sat, never did. So he was like, all right, if he comes in, buzz us, we'll come back. Of course, like the day they pull off the dentist office, he comes in, the guy's buzzing it, the thing don't work. They completely miss him. I mean, there was so many times that they just barely miss catching him. And he said when he was in jail, and this is the odd thing about a lot of these serial killers, when he was in jail, he said he had women flocking, like sending. I mean, he killed women, raped them, killed them, and he said people just send underwear in the mail and proposing to him, and just all
he
kinds
got
of stuff.
married in jail,
Yeah,
or yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
that's freaking
started
insane.
that whole craze, right?
Yeah, but and there's pictures of him like he looks like a creepy dude,
He
very creepy.
looks like a person that, you're on a bus and you look at him and go, I'm not going to sit anywhere near him.
Yeah,
Just a little bit off.
like he's been on the bus for 3 years. Like, never got off. Just been sitting in sitting in the back fucking row for 3 years. That way, never got off. Not shower, not nothing.
Right. Yeah, he
Look
gets
like
his
a
own
dirty
seat.
fella.
Yeah.
What's one of the wildest ones of Unsolved? You said you had
So yeah, there's the Honolulu Strangler,
ooh,
right?
Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii, and
I'm
that's what kind of drew me to as you start doing research and such. I was thinking that, that place is pretty nice. You know, I mean, I get that there are beaches, like Long Island and such, but but you're still near city and stuff. But Honolulu is beautiful. You know, it's only positive vibes there. But now in between 85 and 86, there was the Honolulu Strangler,
Mhm.
and um, there were bodies popping up. There were um, they were transient, so there were people that some were coming home from work,
Mhm.
just walking, because people walked a lot. You can easily walk in Honolulu. Um, but he was, or I say he, they. Um, there was a person that was suspected. His name was Howard Gay. Wasn't arrested, but his ex-wife said it's him.
Of
And now
course.
I think every ex-wife's going to do that,
Yeah,
right? Pretty
yeah.
much just default, right? But but she said, but what was interesting is like he would bind them and he would tie them up and he was into bondage. And so that's what she said. She was like, "Oh, well, he used to do that to me." So basically, that's what she was saying. She gave away, did that with me. That's what he's doing with those. So,
Mhm.
but they didn't arrest him. So they all stopped. He doesn't no more kills, but there was 5 kills back in 85 and 86. So that was the most surprising one.
Yeah, that's something you don't think about too. There's, listen to a podcast. There's a lot of, ones that kind of jump off the map. I know one of the big ones that I think that I seen a series about not too long ago, or two of them really, the Burger Chef murders. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So it was a group of people it was the Burger Chef was the restaurant. Somebody come in, basically killed, I think, 3 people and then the bowling alley in Las Cruces. I can't remember the exact name of it. It basically killed up. They come in after the in a bowling alley and killed up a shitload of people. One of them lived. They never found out who did that. Yeah, yeah, or seemingly. I mean, you don't really know. They never really caught people. I think sometimes that is scarier than the people because somebody or two, some people, a group of people, whatever the case may be, brutally unalived a lot of these people, and nobody's went down for it. So they're still out there. Now, it could have been caught for something else, and they just didn't cop to it. But, I think the thought of someone still being out there that committed these acts and is walking amongst society is a lot scarier than knowing somebody has been arrested for
100%, man. That's a getting away with it. Like the thing with Dennis Rader was he got away with it.
it. Mhm.
100% he got away with it, but he was just an idiot and he couldn't just sit there. But that meant for those 2 decades, he was just, you know, he was hanging out, you know, and he was a deacon in the church and all that kind of stuff. And uh, um, uh, so, of course, that's what scares everybody. Like that's that. Those are the things that I'm drawn to because it's so ominous and unassuming that they're right there. You know, it's
Any
like the uh, killer in California that I don't have in my book. Um, I'm blanking on his name. Um, they just caught him recently.
Golden State Killer? Yeah.
D'Angelo, right?
Yep.
And yeah, the Golden State. So D'Angelo, like, you know, they caught him because of DNA matching on a public DNA site. Um,
Which raised some red flags about the legalities of all that. That was kinda cutting edge, and they may have overstepped some bounds, but, still
it's
caught.
interesting, but it was a. See, I get that, and I totally get that. They didn't use 23andMe, and they didn't use Ancestry. It was a public. It was like a.
Yeah.
It was a free one, and so you use it at will, I guess. But yeah, I get it. Like, but that was some pretty good police work. But I love.
Oh, it was very good because you get the DNA match, and then just by process of elimination, you knock out everybody it can be, and I don't think he thought he was ever gonna be caught.
No, no, and he was brutal. That guy was. He was sadistic. He was sadistic to the people that would live. Like tying up, putting in putting up the plates on the husband while he rapes his. Man, that's brutal.
Oh, he called because I covered him too. I went through this little phase for a little while. We was covering a lot of serial killers, and he called one of his victims at her job, and I guess he's probably spotted her or followed her maybe after the fact. He probably followed her, but he called her at work at her job and was like breathing real heavy and saying, "You remember when we played?" And I was just like, that had to be fucking terrifying to know like, that now he knows where you're at again. Like, I don't know how that woman would sleep again. And, you know, and and I think from what I remember, he kept wanting to I know he did rape some people, but, like, he had the one thing that stood out to everybody was he had a very small wang.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess we'll put it
Yes.
like that. Not we
That
haven't
was
talked
the
about no murders, but
yeah, we were that's how you can tell he were raped from. But yeah, he was a rapist before he was a killer.
yeah.
Like, so he was up in Sacramento and he was
Mhm,
the cop and there was a number of rapes all in the same area.
mhm.
So, yeah, and apparently they could easily tie it together because he had a small dick.
Yeah. That tied it all together. And then he comes in there looking like he's about to die, which I mean, at that time, maybe he was, but coming in looking all frail, I was like, you're not going to get much sympathy for all the shit you caused. Um, anything like, and I recently did a podcast with a gentleman, his name escapes me. We talked about the Jersey Devil, which was a guy named Tommy Sullivan that was allegedly possessed by the devil or joined a cult or something like that. He killed his mom, beat his mom in the head with a barbell, set the house on fire in an attempt to kill his brother and his father, ran across the woods to watch the house burn, and slit his own throat. So, and that happened in New Jersey, which is what they referred to, at least in what he said was the New Jersey Devil. Um, and I never really thought too much about like, the paranormal type killers or anything like that of demonic possessions. Did you run across any of those in this book?
I did not. So
Okay.
that's an interesting story. So no, I had not. I mean, the closest, of course, is Richard Ramirez, who thought he
Yeah.
was possessed by the devil or
Put the
whatever.
pentagram on his
Yeah.
palm or whatever. Yeah, it was an interesting story, and the guy's got a podcast called The Devil Within, and they cover different, areas and different serial killers. He covers Son of Sam, but the first one was this kid named Tommy Sullivan, and, I'll tell the story. It's the first time I ever got chills on a podcast, right? He said that he interviewed the nun that was like the principal of the school, and she said that they could just tell the kid was acting different, and she's calling his name, Tommy, 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 he's not answering, and this is right before Christmas break, and said he goes, "Whoever's in there, I want you to know that, exorcism is a Catholic rite available to you." Said the kid stops, turns around, and said, like, for a second, his face kinda, softened and eyes teared up, looked at him and said, "It's too late for that, sister." Turned around, left, and then, like, a couple days later, killed his mom, killed himself, and tried to kill his brother and his dad. Yeah, very good. When he told me that story, the way he said it, I'm sure he rehearsed it, but, like, the hairs on my arms stood up because that's another thing to where, A, it's a kid doing this, which is, another level of creepiness, and then you add the paranormal thing. Did you have any kids on the list by the
I
chance?
did not have any kids on the list.
Okay,
Yeah.
because unfortunately, they're out there.
There are. I mean, if you go back to Ed Kemper, like his first two kills were his grandparents.
Yeah,
Um, and the quote there for what he said was, "I just wanted to see what it'd be like to kill grandma." But then, but there's empathy to that too. Like he he killed his grandfather because he had like remorse. He didn't want he loved his grandparents. He kind of loved his grandparents. Like he loved his grandfather because they were nice to him. His mother
right.
was brutal. Um, and but he killed her, and then he was like, "Well, I don't want him to see her the body." So he just waited for the grandfather to come home and killed him. And I thought that was oddly empathetic. I'm oddly
Yeah,
sympathetic to But then he
um,
was, he was only 15 when he did that,
yeah,
and then he he was released, right? So he was released to just have supervision, and he was punctual. He was a punctual dude because he actually showed up for his psychiatric appointment with portions of a body in the trunk. He didn't. He wasn't finished, and he was like, "I still got to get. I got still have to get there." So he made it there. Yeah. So he's
not bad.
punctual. You got to give him credit for being.
Yeah, you gotta give them credit somewhere. Well, we're closing in on time here. What's one more that you think is a goose to tell people they got to go check out Serial Killer Travel Guide Across America? Because I got to tell you, I've enjoyed this episode. I can talk serial killers all day long. We've hit a lot of the mainstays. Give me one state. Yeah, give me an album. Give me an album.
So there's a city in Virginia called Alexandria,
Yep.
very quaint little city, right? And there was, believe it or not, two serial killers from Alexandria, right? Weird because it's a quaint little city. It's not, you would not think it would be a hotbed. But one of those serial killers, his name was Charles Severance. And Charles Severance was the grudge killer. And he was a grudge killer because he had a grudge. And that was the connection between all of his murders. But why it's unique about it was this is in the 90s and early 2000s. Um, he was a uh, he ran for the mayor of Charles of Alexandria, and he also ran for Congress. And if you ever saw a picture of him, he kind of looked like Santa Claus on a week long crack binge. Like he does not look like he should be running for any office, but that's kind of what he looked like. Um, but he was he was just a person I discovered during the travels.
That's interesting, man. I think this is a very interesting book. I'm looking. When's the drop date on this?
Oh, it just dropped today, actually.
Drop today. Okay, so we're gonna put a link to that in Amazon. Is it available on all platforms like Kindle, audiobook,
Yeah,
and
it's
all that?
well, the audiobook's coming out, I believe, in next week or shortly after. But right now, it's in hardback, paperback, and Kindle.
Wow, okay, great. So we're gonna put a link to that in our show notes. We'll try to get this up as soon as possible. We're recording it today. It dropped today, so we might be a little behind on the drop date. We'll definitely put a link in the description of the show notes. Johnny, thank you very much for coming on, my friend. I've really enjoyed this episode. I think this is the again, look, we said in the beginning, there's a fascination between all this, and people hit me up all the time. And it was like, why you interview all these people? You're glorifying it. I'm like, nobody's glorifying it. Like I'm letting them tell the story. And it's the same thing. You had a news anchor to interview Charles Manson. They're not advocating that what he did was okay. They're allowing him to tell the story because I think it's important that you study why these people did this. You're not going to figure it out from every one of them. Some of them are just going to be a mystery of why they're screwed up. You can go back to when they got bonked on the head. Ted Bundy said there was a fall on his head when he was young or whatever. Or he could just be a fucking wacko, who knows? But I think that is the psyche and what makes these people tick is always going to be a fascination. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing a little bit about this book.
Wait, I appreciate the opportunity. I had fun.
So Johnny, real quick before we get out of here, are you on any social medias? That way the listeners can go follow you and give you a follow and track you down.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I have a website, johnnytrevisani.com. You can find me on Facebook. I have a page called Johnny T, the serial killer travel guide. I have on Instagram, Johnny Trevisani author. So those are the main ones.
All right. We will tag all them in the bottom of the show notes here. Go check it out. Give them a follow. Give them a like. Follow along. I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this book, Serial Killer's Travel Guide Across America. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode of Crime and Entertainment. Check out Serial Killer's Travel Guide Across America. Johnny Trevisani. We'll see you next week here on Crime and Entertainment. Johnny, we'll see you, my friend.
Take care.